Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, your weekly discussion of motoring news. This is episode 586 on Tuesday, the 9th of July, 2024. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. And this week we'll be finding out how US pollution is less dangerous than foreign pollution. In new car news, we note that with power comes extra responsibility in one country. And in points of interest, it's for all of those who know you don't have to shout power to be quick. But first, we have two pieces of follow-up, and the first one's a bit chunky, and I'll get straight into it. It's about how the Chinese-made EV tariffs have come into force in the EU now. And these are interim tariffs, apparently, although they look fairly definitive now. But the EU has published a document that explains who has got what tariff, which we did know beforehand about percentage-wise. But they break it down into what those tariffs are made up of in terms of who's had what specific bits of state aid, or what the EU is saying is state aid. So this could be loans that are of a lower interest rate. It could be that they've been helped out with materials, all this sort of stuff. So they break it down into that. So there will be a Reuters article that you can click in the show notes to get the full skinny on that. But as a consequence, there is quite a bit of news about this, isn't there, Alan?
Yes, there is. There's loads of sort of sub-stories around this. In sort of response, we've got things like SAIC Motor is seeking a European Commission hearing on EV tariffs. They're going into it and they're saying, well, actually, you don't have all this evidence from us. And the EU is saying, well, we did ask for it, but you didn't respond. As Andrew joked before we started recording, obviously, somebody mistyped an email or something. The other thing is, of course, there is a move to try to establish factories in or around the EU. Big announcement the other day, BYD signed a $1 billion deal to have a plant in Turkey. Now, there is no way that has started and ended in the same time as these discussions over EU tariffs.
How dare you,
This must have been years in the making. It just happened to coincide.
Not at all.
Or was dragged forward a week or something.
No. I think you're completely wrong, and the EU politicians will quite rightly take full credit for this, even though it's in Turkey. But Turkey is a partner country to the EU. They've got free trade agreements with the EU. Building your stuff in Turkey and bringing it into the EU doesn't get the same penalties as, say, China.
No, exactly. Expect that, and relatively low labour costs, etc.
Yeah.
That is all there. Other company that is looking for somewhere to build in the EU is Smart. Do you remember Smart? Smart that not long ago had a factory in northern France.
Ah, that's Smart, not a different
That's
one.
Smart. Not a different Smart. No, the Smart that has just sold its factory to Ineos.
Smart by name and...
Yeah. The flip side of that is, of course, Ineos during the week, which isn't really a news story. The Ineos announced that it was delaying its... I've forgotten the name of it. The little one, the one smaller than the Grenadier, it's not written down in front of me, which was meant to be all electric, and it's doing it because it's citing that there's less demand for electric vehicles. Yeah, good luck on that one. So anyway, there's half a factory all geared up to build electric vehicles.
Of a certain size.
In northern France. Of a certain size. Well, the Smarts are much bigger now. But similar size to the Fusilier. That's it.
Oh, yeah. Well done from that. I didn't have a clip. But just to finally round out the stories about China, is that the Chinese government has tightened regulations on a certain number of rare earth materials which are used in many elements of renewable energy and for net zero type industries. But these in particular, some of them that are being mentioned that are now going to be controlled much tighter, they are used heavily in high density electric motors because they give them extra oomph from less, as it were, by adding this particular material. It makes the magnet much more efficient and powerful.
Curiously, they're also using wind turbines for exactly the same reasons, but the opposite use.
Yeah, this is just a little flex by Beijing to remind the EU that any geopolitical things do go both ways.
Yes.
And this is the tightrope we have talked about repeatedly that the EU has got to walk. They have decided on a set of policies which the UK government previously and the new one is seeming to follow along-ish with, which means that we need more renewable energy production and that sort of thing. However, the country that produces the equipment to do that is China. You can't get too cross with them if they happen to be able to, virtually the only ones who supply you with that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Trade used to be sort of, well, we'll get stuff from them, we'll throw money their way because they need the money. And that's what it was all about. And then it's not really quite like that anymore. It is far more of an exchange and a little bit of a drag as to which way the balance of trade goes.
Although with the EU's policy and factories looking like they're going to be built by Chinese companies in Europe, does mirror it back 20, 30 years with what happened in China.
Yeah.
It is a circular economy, fully on.
That's not what people mean when they say circular economy. Let's just be clear on that.
No, of course they don't. Yeah. Anyway, let's move away from China and let's come back to Britain and let's talk about how EU regulations are actually going to impact us.
Yes, the whole mandatory speed limit thing.
General Safety Rule 2.
Yes, is being introduced in July this month.
Started on Friday. What has happened here is the General Safety Rule 2, the middle segment, because there was the introduction in 2022 of initial bits of tech in...
Yep. That's your lane keeping and everything.
Yeah, July 7th, I think it was, 2024, was things like intelligent speed limiter, all cars must be fitted with reversing cameras. There's also extra cybersecurity stuff, which is technical stuff that we won't know or care about. What was the other thing? Oh, drowsiness detectors, allegedly.
Oh, gee.
Driver monitoring systems, allegedly. We all thought the UK was adopting this along with the EU. So that's come into play in the EU and Northern Ireland, because that is still part of the EU, let's not forget.
So pathetic.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
I know, it really
Sorry.
is.
It really is so dumb.
It is. As a consequence, the reality will be that we will get it on cars in the UK as well, because it is far too expensive for a manufacturer to not have the stuff fitted, to take it out of a smaller portion than it is already fitted, particularly if you're going to go, but some right-hand drive ones, we won't fit it because they're going to Northern Ireland. What happened? I'm curious what happens if something imports from...
Well, they'll need it for the rest of Ireland as well.
We are going to get it, and these are things you need to be aware of. We will link to a Thatcham Research video where the chap explains very well what the elements are, and he explains intelligent speed limiter as well. In an ideal world, by the way.
I could hear the inverted commas around the word intelligent just so.
Yes. There's an awful lot of things, but what was really interesting was him saying, and this is no spoiler, but he said, you have to make sure you get the latest, you keep the maps up to date.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, you've put the onus on the drivers there. That seems difficult.
But that stuff just means it drives people, sorry, pun not intended, towards using phone-based maps because they're always the most up to date. Take the struggle I have over here trying to get updated maps for my Lexus because they've changed all the exit numbers. The roads haven't changed fundamentally, but they've changed all the exit numbers. So I was trying to get up-to-date maps for that. And you go along and you go, they're still not up-to-date. The guy at the parts counter goes, I wouldn't do that if I were you. He said, you can. I'll order them for you, but they're still not up-to-date.
Well, we had it with Google, TomTom, and others when Wales changed to 20 mile an hour. They said, do not trust your GPS for speed limits.
And now the cars are being made to trust the GPS for speed limits.
Exactly. I mean, this is the farce of it all. Anyway.
I'm far more tolerant of these things than you are. And then, in fact, I'm far more tolerant than most of these kinds of things. But this one is just, there are just so many obvious ways that this can go very wrong.
This is what I really have to say every time is I think the tech could be really helpful. I think it could add extra layer of safety and security for the driver to help them if they get into a difficult situation. However, virtually none of it that's been deployed has been deployed well for our public roads.
Yeah, that's basically what it boils down to.
Okay, Alan, it's nearly the beginning of the month, which means...
It means it's SMMT new car registration figures for June 2024. Woo! The new car market has grown a whopping 1.1%, so it's still within my 2% rounding error, and to reach 179,263 units, and it has broken the million motors mark. There should be capital letters or a registered trademark or something after that. At the half-year point for the first time since 2019. Battery electric cars have a record high monthly market share in June at 19%. That means 34,034 were registered, 91,227 petrol cars, and just under 11,000 diesel, with PHEVs at 16,604 and straight up hybrids at 26,702.
Year to date, though, because that's important, particularly for the BEVs. Year to date is that the market share for BEVs is 16.6%. Remember, we need as close to 22% for the individual companies as possible, or they are buying credits from others to avoid the £15,000 per car fine.
Which is special. Petrol vehicles, by the way, down 7.8%, diesel down 17.2% compared to 2023. That's on the monthly, that's in June 2023. But overall, diesel vehicles down 12.1% on the year to date. Petrol up 2.7%. As ever, the majority of vehicles are registered by fleets, because that includes so many ways that people buy or finance vehicles these days. It's just the way them rules is. But that meant that private registrations were down 15%. Fleet registrations were up 14%. Business was up 22% as well, after a long time. Yeah, very low indeed.
But if we look at the market share, that puts these into perspective. Fleet is at 59.1%, which is huge. Private is astonishingly low at 37.7%, and business, whilst it jumped 22% in the month,
still only 3.2%.
Yeah.
The top models list, that makes me happy every time I see it.
Yes, thank you, SMM.
It's very, very flat. I mean, there is. Between number 10 and number 1, there is 1,002 registrations of difference.
Yes.
Number 10 is the Tesla Model 3 with 3,111 registrations. The MG ZS managed 2 registrations more to be in at number 9. Tiny little blip to the Ford Puma, Nissan Qashqai, Hyundai Tucson. And then number 5 is a BMW 1 Series, 3,397 registrations. So only 200 and under 300 between 5 and 10. Number 4 is the Volkswagen Golf. Number 3 is the Tesla Model Y. Number 2 is the Nissan Juke with 3,891 registrations. And number 1 is the Kia Sportage with 4,113 registrations. Nothing exciting or even, dare I say it, particularly interesting in that list.
All fine.
All lots of competent, fine vehicles.
Yep. Okay, let's quickly run through the spreadsheet of doom and joy. And this month, running through the dooms, Alpine is down at 20... Well, sorry, okay, before I start, there's an awful lot of companies I'm going to mention here that have very small numbers and therefore will make the percentages sound quite scary. And it will actually have an impact on their balance sheets, because a lot of these models are high profit. Having less of them causes a problem. But I'm not going to run through all the numbers. I'm just going to try and do the percentages, otherwise we'll be here quite a long time.
Yeah.
Alpine is down 26%. Bentley is down 45%. DS is down 69%. Ford is down 42%. Now, I will mention this one. Last year, 14,744. This year, 8,496. That's a big drop. That has got to be painful.
And of those 8,000, 3,169 were Pumas.
Yeah, that's a big dent. Okay, Genesis is down 26%. Ineos is down 84%. Jaguar is down 20%. Lexus is down 16%. Maserati is down 55%. Polestar is down 41%. Porsche is down 40%. Subaru, after quite a few months of ups, they have a slightly less rosy month where they're down 32%. And Vauxhall, another main brand that you would hope was doing better than this, is down 37%. So that was 9,927 in 2023 to 6,248.
Okay, I'll run through and do the opposites then. Alfa Romeo up 76%, BMW up 16%, BYD up 4,547%.
Congratulations.
Yes, the MG Awards this month. The 697 vehicles registered as opposed to 15. Citroen up 40, Cupra up 17, Dacia up 20, GWM Aura up 647, that's 284 as opposed to 38. Jeep up 71%, 624 Jeep registered. Renault up 44, Seat up 35, Smart up 175. Again, having vehicles to sell makes a big difference, or even register. Toyota up 17% and Volvo up 42.28%. That must be all those new estate cars.
Yes. We're also going to link to a couple of interesting articles from Autocar because I think they give a little bit of context.
Some really good opinion pieces actually coming from Autocar about stuff.
Yes. Yeah. The first one I'm going to link to is from Matt Pryor, and he is talking about how or who he feels will end up paying the full price for the zero emission vehicle mandate. Without spoiling too much, it's us.
It's us. Yeah, I feel, however, I will say that the first 2 or 3 paragraphs, I feel very seen indeed. As someone whose car twitches as it passes because it's so used to going into them. Yes, I feel very seen by those first 3 paragraphs.
But the rest of his article actually reminded me of something we didn't talk about when discussing how Suzuki are rationalizing their offerings by cutting out a lot of ICE models, is that there are still a large number of people who are interested in a new car who cannot make the move to a zero-emission vehicle. And I'm sorry to break that to those who feel, no, just buy an electric, it's dead easy. It is not practical for everybody. There are still portions of the population that just can't do it.
It's dumb stuff like you live on the top of the hill, you just can't get the power to the top of the hill. I mean, I know that previously my parents' house would have been in that situation. The supply was simply not, the supply to years ago when we put it in was simply not envisaged for electric car chargers.
Yeah. By this mandate coming in and manufacturers taking the understandable move of going, well, the only way to get our percentage up is if we do not offer this other thing. It means that instead of someone buying the newest and cleanest version of that technology possible, they will go second hand. And that you're really sort of defeating a portion of the argument or causing an unintended consequence.
Yes. Well, there is also another argument there by someone saying, well, if they're buying second hand, then of course that's going to be much cleaner and greener than building a whole new car.
Yeah. Then we get into other. Yeah.
Then it goes all sorts of different ways from there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's worthwhile. But we'll see. I think that overall, you and I, when we were discussing Mark's article beforehand.
That's the second one we're linking to, by the way, the editor's letter.
Yes. Our conclusion was there's quite a lot to do that's probably more important than automotive.
Or seen as.
Seen as more important than automotive. But on the other hand, it's nice to know there's a strategy, both automotive and industrial, rather than a flip-flopping for favors.
Yes. Making statements for clout.
Yes, basically.
Those will be linked in the show notes as well for you to read through and enjoy.
Speaking of making statements for clout, despite the fact that something was already known and announced. Do you want to take us to the next one?
Yes, people are shocked that something that was announced in 2020 is actually still going to happen when they said it would in December 2025, which is that electric vehicle drivers will also be charged the congestion charge in London by TfL. Apparently, this was a surprise to some, who then decided that they would still continue to drag motoring into the culture wars for stupidity reasons. This was always going to happen. TfL have been very upfront about it. They've given 5 years' notice on electric vehicles, and of course they're going to pay. It's like with the road tax, even though it's not road tax, but you know what I mean. That was always coming in. It is going to come in. That is just what's going to happen, because somebody has to. You're still not fixing the problem of congestion, just the fact that you're doing it in a way that doesn't spew out fumes out of a tailpipe.
The story that's going to be linked in the show notes is from evpowered.co.uk. There's a quote here. It says, the decision has been met with criticism. The AA described the policy change as a turkey bone in the throat for EV owners. Have I got this wrong? No, I'm right. I'm right.
You're reading it right. And
who heeded the call to switch to green. And I feel that the AA is less and less of an actual reflection of common sense and reality.
If I see it and I see spokesman or their president, I know I can ignore it because it's going to come out with something generally factually incorrect.
This was announced 5 years ago. Congestion charge is such a terrible name for it. But the thing is, it's worked. Even with the EVs allowed, it has worked in central London. There are, and I'm talking about the initial area. I'm not talking about the new extended one, which I have no experience of. But in central London, the lack of congestion in the middle of London is really quite impressive. If there is congestion in central London, you can bet it's been caused by illegal parking of a van, probably, or a commercial vehicle of some sort, or buses.
Well, the foreign diplomats are very happy with it because they can get around much quicker.
Yeah, well, exactly, yes.
Okay. Shall you, as our US correspondent, tell us about pollution, please?
Well, there's quite a lot of it.
Well, not according to one company.
Not according to one company. General Motors have been fined for releasing excess emissions from their vehicles. I was trying to word that in a way that didn't sound dodgy or a double entendre. But between 2012 and 2018 model years, GM vehicles were emitting more than 10% higher carbon dioxide on average than the company's compliance reports claimed, according to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. That includes 4.6 million full-size pickup and sport utility vehicles, 1.3 million mid-size SUVs, such as the Chevy Equinox, Tahoe, and Silverado models. As a result of this, GM has had to cancel 50 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions from the EPA and 30.6 million gas mileage credits. America, you beat France on bureaucracy. It is amazing. And so on and so forth. But the headline figure is the $146 million fines in penalties. This goes on top of other smaller payments in the past, but it turns out that for far more pollution, if you're American, you get far less of a fine and punishment than if, say, you're Volkswagen.
Yeah, I was going to say, was there not recently-ish, certainly in the lifetime of this podcast, a company from, I think it was Europe somewhere, that got a few fines for this sort of thing? I'm sure it wasn't millions, though.
I can't think.
I'm convinced it was nothing to do with millions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just the hypocrisy is quite startling, really.
It's a link to a Jalopnik morning shift story with subsequent links into each of the stories in more detail. Make sure you have your ad blocker on. Sorry, that sounds terrible. I don't like saying that, but otherwise Jalopnik's awfully difficult to read.
Yeah.
Reader view on your phone, that's your friend.
Yes, it is. Okay, I'm going to round out the first part of the show with the news that Charge Cars, which is a Mustang electro mod maker, or was going to be, they didn't actually make any.
I'd just like to say, if you went poo when Andrew said Charge Cars, then we're in the same boat, folks.
Yes. They have gone belly up. They were an Arrival sibling. Therein tells all the explanation one needs, really.
For both Arrival and for them, I think.
Yes. There was a £350,000 1967 Ford Mustangs that were going to be powered by Arrival's battery technology and platforms.
Can anybody else see why that's now not really sustainable?
Yes. They have blamed significant challenges. Whilst they have working tirelessly to navigate these challenging times, I am quoting a quote from the Autocar article that will be linked in the show notes. Yeah, there's 50 or so employees have been all made redundant, but McLaren has already set up a dedicated job page for ex-charge staff, offering them positions there, which is great to see, because as ever with any of these stories, and I think we will increasingly be saying this, we feel sorry for the poor staff who have been let down by management, in this instance, not just at their company, but in other companies associated with them. There is one glimmer of hope. There is one glimmer of decent bit to this, and is they had a spin-off company called Lab 364, which is a paint shop that is apparently focused on high-value projects. They have got clients including Callum, the design consultancy, and BAC, the track car makers.
There's no mention there as to whether or not that survived separately or not.
Yes.
In the UK, super lucky that there's a market for that kind of thing, especially if you're in the Oxford area. Lots of small projects, high-value vehicles, things that can't really go through normal car places. That would be a cool thing if that is standalone, if that is going to continue. Otherwise, it is also going to cause issues for other companies as well. They're going to have to find new suppliers or just buy it.
That is the other option.
Alternative, really, isn't it?
Yes. But I think that drags us kicking and screaming to the end of the first part, though, Alan.
It does. It brings us to Guilt Minute. A quick break in the show where we ask for a tad of financial support, keep the lights on and the hosting running. If you feel the Motoring Podcast is worth a small consideration every month, then you can become a patron. Different levels of patron include different levels of commitment from us to you, including being able to watch the show recorded live. We have a small range of merchandise in our spring store, from stickers to mugs and t-shirts. And if you don't have any spare cash, and we do completely understand, then you can help us by following for free from a podcast player to receive every show as they're released, and by liking and rating the show in whatever way your podcast supplier lets you. If you've done all of that, and some of you do, so thank you very much, then the last thing you can do is to recommend us to your friends or colleagues.
Thank you, everyone. Very, very much appreciated. And that drops us straight into new car news, Alan. Well, on paper, this should be right up your street, a two-door coupe.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's front-wheel drive. It's only got 200 horsepower, and it looks a bit like a Duck at the front, and unfortunately like a Honda Civic at the back. Which is ironic, given it is mostly a Honda Civic. Honda will be bringing the new Prelude Sports Coupe to the UK. I hope that I am being a negative Nelly, and I'm completely wrong, by the way. Here, it will be the 6th generation Prelude. There's a useful thing. Nothing interesting like four-wheel steering, four-wheel drive, or anything like that on it. Purely a hybrid. Firms suggest it will serve as a halo product for its lineup of electrified models, currently consisting of SUVs, and a showcase for its hybrid powertrain technology. It has a 2-litre petrol engine with a pair of electric motors. In the Civic, it's good for 181 horsepower and an official 56.5 miles per gallon, which is what you look for when you're buying a coupe. It's thought that it may ramp up the output, but if not, then that's the same as a 2-litre MX-5, and that's 50 horsepower less than my Yaris. Just to add on a much bigger, heavier car.
Yeah.
The trouble with this, right, is I don't understand who's going to buy it. I don't see where the market is. If it was a powerful Type R engined one,
well, yeah.
If it was some form of, the rebadged Acura Integra, something like that, sold over here, then I can absolutely see where the market would be for people who kind of want the Civic Type R, but it's a bit much and it attracts the wrong kind of attention. So someone like me, in other words. But if it's not that, if it is mostly pretty, people aren't going to cross-shop it against, say, GR86.
No.
It's front-wheel drive. So you don't get that market. It's not basic enough to be an equivalent to, say, the Scion TC that I had when I came here, which the idea was stripped out, basic price. It's not very powerful, but it handles decently well, which I'm sure this will as well. It's at a price where it's coming in aiming at a youth market, and supposedly this is aiming at a younger market as well. But I again, not sure.
Well, we've no idea on the price, so
yeah, no prices have been announced yet. But it seems to sit in this weird middle ground where I think it's a bit of a no man's land, and some old people might buy it. Oh, I've always wanted a coupe. Oh, and it's a hybrid. And it'll get me back and forth, get me back and forth to the shops. And it's a Honda. We liked our CR-V.
Yeah.
That's the best I can see.
Because it looks like it's the equivalent of that one that you've got in the US, like shape-wise.
Got the Civic Coupe.
Yeah, the Civic Coupe. It looks like it is the Civic Coupe.
I don't know if there is a coupe version of the current Civic. I should really have checked. But the previous generation, it looks like an evolution of the previous generation of Civic Coupe. It does not look like it's a standalone Prelude. I've tried not to say that and tried to do the whole thing, but it's a Civic Coupe.
I forced you into it.
You have. And
it's based on, the underpinnings are of a Civic. So.
But, you can still do lots with, just because the underpinnings are from
yeah, of course,
a rare pedestrian car, then you can let the engineers do what the engineers would love to do. And Honda does have very good engineers. As I say, I don't understand where it sits. I don't understand where the buyers are.
The unfortunate thing is it looks like it's a two-door Civic.
Yeah.
Whereas the Prelude never looked like it was a
two-door Civic.
Two-door Civic or a two-door Accord, which would be closer to it back in the day.
Yeah.
But like we say, though, a two-door coupe, fingers are crossed it is successful and good.
Well, it's not an electric SUV, so there is something to be happy about. SUVs, though.
Yeah, I am going to take us well away from that. For those who think the Defender 110 does not have quite enough poke for them, and is not quite good enough on the roads, well, they have decided that they will come out with the Octa. It is priced at starting from £158,000, and they state, says the brand boss Mark Cameron, that this is a Defender on steroids. The pinnacle. I don't know if that's how he speaks at all, by the way.
I would imagine he doesn't speak like that, and he's normalish.
This is going to use the usual 4.4-litre BMW V8 engine that is in the Range Rover. It's a 626 brake horsepower, which will deliver 590 pound-foot of torque, which puts it up there with the AMG G63, or the Mercedes.
108 horsepower more powerful than the standard Defender V8.
0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds, which seems really sensible in something that sized. Top speed of 155 mile per hour as it punches through the air while shaped like a brick.
Do you know what? I love the fact that not only that, but the wading depth has also been improved by 100 millimeters to an entire meter. And the axle articulation has also increased over the standard one. So it does it at both ends, so to speak, of the range.
They also are talking a lot about how it is going to be as good on the road as it is off, which is going to be interesting in something the size of a small country house being propelled like that. I'm not saying I dislike it. I don't, because whenever a company comes out and has thrown in massive amounts of power into a normal car, I quite like the fact that they've still done it, because it'd be very easy, particularly in the market today, to just play safe and never do anything like this.
Yeah, I am full of admiration that this has happened. I do really like it, and I'm slightly ashamed of the fact of how much I like it.
I love the wheels that are on the green, it's a satin finish one here, but the green version that's in the Autocar article linked. Yeah, I really am a big fan of those wheels. I expect I will see one or two near me, looking at some of the other vehicles we have locally.
Yeah, I mean, they'll appear around here pretty darn quickly. There's plenty of Defenders are appearing around here.
Yeah, there's 1,070 going to be sold.
It's worth mentioning the most hardcore variant will be the launch spec, £158,000 Year 1 edition, which has the top rung tyres, 20-inch wheels, a roof box, and a Whittle Wadder. You can tell the difference because it's marked out from the standard Octa by carbon fibre detailing, pharaoh green paint, and khaki interior features. I really like it. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't. I know I should be appalled. Terrible waste of resources, etc. But I like it. I like it a lot. The current generation Defender has really grown on me.
Oh, I do like this. I do like the shape. I just wish the people around here didn't buy it in black.
At least around here, they get them in different colours and in different specs and all sorts of things.
Well, we've got one that's that lovely light green. That's almost a heritage.
Do you know
colour,
the coolest one I've ever seen? I've never had an opportunity to mention it on the podcast, I don't think. I was somewhere in the Midwest last summer, and it was a silver 110 on the silver 5-spoke wheels, and it was towing a polished, quite a small Airstream Caravan.
Oh, very cool.
And it was just like, that is lifestyle done right. It was so cool. It was it looked like something out of a brochure.
Right.
It was so cool. It was just on the highway. It was just on the highway. And I was like, oh, that's really good. That is, I could aspire to that. Despite the fact that it involved a Land Rover product and a Caravan, it was still aspirational. And that takes some doing, really, doesn't it? Thought that was super cool.
Okay, well, talking of super cool things, do you want to take us on to the Niobolt?
Yes, it's a kind of weird one to pronounce, that one. This is a new collaboration between Niobolt and Callum. It is a very heavily Elise-inspired roadster that is electric. So we've done electric, we've done SUV. We have not done electric SUV this week. The part of the aim for this is to show off their rapid charging battery tech.
Which is really impressive.
I'm just going to get to that in just a second. Because this mostly Elise-sized car, I mean, it's based on an Exige S chassis. It is a bit wider at the back, which makes it more muscular. It's got different lights and guts and all sorts of stuff because it's been designed and styled under the pen of Julian Thompson, who I'm sure all regular listeners will know is responsible for the Mark I Lotus Elise, as well as the interior of the Lotus Elan as well. And many spoilers on the back of Lotus Esprit. It looks a lot like a kind of slightly steroidal Elise, but underneath that is a 35 kilowatt hour battery pack, which goes from, conditions allowing, will go from 10 to 80% in 4 minutes, 37 seconds on a 350 kilowatt charger. That gives it a maximum range of 155 miles on the WLTP cycle. 155 miles and being able to charge.
Well, no, the maximum range is 155, so it's 10 to 80% of that, but that's still in less than 5 minutes. That is the future we were promised with electric vehicles.
It's not enough time to go for a pee. That's the problem with that. You don't actually have enough time.
Now in the complaint, it's too quick.
There. It's too quick. It's far too fast. How dare they do this to us? Battery has had the equivalent of 600,000 miles testing of road use, still has over 80% of its original capacity after that time, and uses all sorts of things like integrated power electronics, low impedance cell designs. And the aim of this is to show that EVs don't need big, heavy batteries to perform the tasks required of them, as I think some of us have said for a while, but it's trying to get that into people's psyche. Oh, by the way, the curb weight is 1,250 kilos. That is about just over 600 kilos lighter than the MG Cyberster and only 148 kilos more than an Alpine A110.
Looking forward to David Pook offering services to tweak the possible 25 cars if they ever make them. But it is effectively a demonstrator for the battery technology, and the company is in conversation with several OEMs for this tech to be used in high-performance EVs, which obviously that will happen initially. Because when I first read it, I thought, that's a shame. It could go in smaller cars, but it's going to have to be in the... This tech is not going to be cheap because it's cost a lot to develop to get it to this point. So it needs to go into a high-end model initially to then trickle down.
And then be advertised over a wider...
down through the rest of the... But you imagine something like a Fiat Panda that charged in 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then so many arguments are removed from that problem. And plus, we know at least one listener who must be rubbing his hands and punching the air and going, yes, this is what I keep saying.
Yes. Absolutely. It's not really a new car news story, but it kind of fits in here with ridiculously powerful vehicles. So, Andrew.
Well, I was moaning last week about the ridiculousness, and the week before, probably the week before that, about ridiculous power outputs for, well, particularly EVs. But Australia has also noticed this, South Australia in particular, and they are going to be introducing a new U-Class license. And this is for drivers of ultra-high-powered vehicles, or UHPVs, and it will be effective as of December the 1st this year, 2024. What it will cover is a vehicle that has a gross mass of up to 4.5 tons and a power-to-weight ratio of 370 brake horsepower per ton or more, but does not include buses, motorcycles, and motor trikes, i.e., it's your hypercars and the incredibly overpowered EV, well, invariably SUVs.
This story from Driving Masters says it's the more extreme EVs, stuff like the Audi e-tron GT RS with its 845 horsepower comes under that, I'm sure.
I bet that Smart 5 would have come under it.
It's worth doing the maths.
Yeah.
But anyway, this takes the form, by the way, of an online training course, which you need to take and obviously pass. This Australia First initiative requires drivers to complete a mandatory online training course to obtain the license. So it's not a driving test, but you do actually have to have done some additional training and exhibited some understanding before you're allowed to drive.
There's a worrying element of this, though. The devil will be in the detail, but it says there are penalties for disabling driver assistance systems. I'd love to know what's included in that.
Yeah. So the course includes the additional risks posed by UHPVs, unique features of these vehicles, specific laws, dangers of risk-taking behavior, and the penalties for disabling driver assistance systems. Australia is incredibly strict on all of these things. I think any of us who watch Mighty Car Mods will understand at least a bit of that. And South Australia is particularly, from memory, is particularly strict on stuff. But I think that this kind of ultra license is a good idea generally. Again, devil's in the detail, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, the principle is sound. What you and I could drive tomorrow, we could just jump in one of those tomorrow because our licenses in this country allow that.
And here. Even more here.
But you wouldn't be allowed to do that in other forms of transport, which I think links us nicely into points of interest, Alan.
It does link us into points of interest. And the first point of interest is it's an Evo article, and it's your lunchtime read, of course. But it's about modern car user interfaces. Flying and airplane aficionado Colin Goodwin has spoken to a proper commercial pilot and been through and looked at, I think in this case, they have a Mercedes EQ something. EQS 450 Plus, which is very much touchscreen controls, as is the Mercedes way at the minute.
But they do make it clear in the article that they're not singling out Mercedes.
No.
They just needed to give this lady a car for a week and say, please go and try and get on with it.
That just happened to be the available vehicle.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we can pick any manufacturer at the minute for stuff being put into a touchscreen, buttons being removed, etc., etc.
Anyway, they do make a point that they're not singling out Mercedes. Generally, there's more nuance and discussion in the article, but generally the outcome is, this isn't very good, is it? And I think I'm possibly understating it. But she does also point out, by the way, that, of course, whilst you just handed a car key in so many ways, so many times, and just basically allowed to go get on with it because you passed a test 20 years ago, whenever pilots have to be certified on different airplane types as they come out and understand where all the controls are and prove that they've understood where all the controls are and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't happen with cars.
No.
And sometimes the control systems and features are so different between them.
Yep. Hopefully the OEMs and those legislating or testing systems in cars are paying attention to that.
Anyway, list of the week, Andrew.
List of the week. This is from Autocar, another slideshow, well, for me, perfectly working slideshow. Thank you once again, Autocar. And it is titled Sleepers, the car world's biggest wolves in sheep's clothing. There are 36 slides. Alan,
Which
there are
work.
many excellent cars on this list,
There
I have
are
to say.
so many excellent cars. So
Considering you and I do love a sleeper, whilst we do also love a car that is festooned with ridiculous wings, stickers, and loud exhaust, there is a time and a place for something that is fast but surprises people.
Yes. So I'm going to choose the Triumph Dolomite Sprint.
Oh, very good choice.
My father, when I was very small, my father worked for one of the biggest British Leyland groups. He always had BL cars. He didn't have, so Fords and Vauxhalls don't really mean anything to me. In fact, once I was very young, and then he kind of before I really remembered stuff, but he had a couple of Dolomite Sprints as company cars. And he claimed there used to be a sign on the M6 that said Birmingham 100 miles. And from that sign to Birmingham, this was during the miners' strike, so there were no police on the roads at all. And he could, with a fully loaded Dolly Sprint, do that in an hour. And then onwards to Cardiff. But, 2-litre, 127 brake horsepower, and looked a lot like the Dolomite 1300. But really cool little car. And a proper BMW competitor in its day as well, before, all the sort of BL-ness comes into play. The actual engineering and the thinking and everything. I mean,
the design, it looks good as well. It looks good.
Yeah, it was a sad day for him when he went from that to a Maxi, but he did actually really like the Maxi.
Okay.
And then to a BMW 3 Series. Back towards the Dolly Sprint. Yeah. BMWs from then on in, pretty much. So it's cool. What about you then? There's loads in here. You can choose something from completely the other end of the spectrum now. I've done these slightly sensible.
I am torn between two. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the Subaru Legacy.
Oh, good.
3-litre R Spec B from 2004.
That was like my second or third. Yeah, I was besides one of these recently.
Yeah, I think it still looks fresh. I think if you came out with something like that, you'd blow away most of the market, because we go, look how clean it looks. Look how because that was something that was mentioned in that Honda Prelude article, is that Honda were keen to say this is a mature design. There's very few lines on it. And I thought, that's an interesting comment.
Especially from Honda. Which
echoes very much what we've said in the previous years about all the slashes, swoops, and dents. You look at that car, particularly this picture that's in the slideshow, you just go, it's a Subaru in it. Nothing exceptional about that. And it would just leave you for dust on the country roads.
They are really cool cars. I mean,
all the vets, wouldn't it? All the vets would have one of them.
Yeah, it was, again, Perth's your favourite, really.
Yeah.
thirsty V6 in it.
Yeah.
But cool. If you can get a good one that hasn't been played with, that's a fantastic car. Really good.
Very good list, Autocar. Thank you.
This is an absolutely cracking list. We could do this again next week, and I would have different choices, and there'd still be plenty left. This is one of the best lists we've seen in a long time.
It is. Thank you. Okay, Alan, do you want to take us to Germany?
And finally, this week, that sounded a little bit strange, didn't it? For years and years and years, BMW supplied cars for the ring taxi, including M5s, leaving me on one memorable occasion to have a BMW M5 pass me sideways with Sabine Schmidt giving me the finger, because clearly I wasn't nearly fast enough, which is not a surprise to anyone who's been on the track in a car with me. There is a certain amount of survival in that case, where you're thinking that this same car has to get me 550 miles home and then take me to work on Tuesday morning.
Well, it's a bit similar to someone we know, Daniel, who's just took his Panda there.
Yeah, I haven't watched that yet. Yes.
Actually, I'll put a link in the show notes to his escapades, because that's brilliant. That shows there are young people who are interested in cars and doing fun car things.
I described him as he's taller than me, and I described him as a pipsqueak last week, and he's still speaking to me, so that's a relief. But no, BMW for some reason, and I cannot understand what the marketing reason behind this could possibly be, seem to have given up the ring taxi gig, and Genesis now has it instead, with the Genesis G70 3.3T saloons in magma orange, and they look very cool. I mean, this is fantastic advertising for Genesis. I mean, I can only imagine that one of the reasons was Genesis came along and said, here's a lot of money if you use our cars, or here are a lot of expensive cars for free. Ring taxi service, by the way, means that you can get a professional driver who knows it like the back of their hand, will take you around the Nürburgring so that you can experience how it really should be driven. And if you want to see how it really should be driven, scroll down a bit.
Yes.
Scroll down a bit to under Performance Showcase, where there is a Genesis. The compression on the outside tyres of that Genesis going around. Oh, goodness, I'm having a mental blank at the name Carousel. Thank you. Going around Carousel and just about scratching its rims is quite something. Genesis taxis will be fitted with bespoke Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres. I've sworn that next time I'm going back to the Nürburgring, or I'm in that part of the world, I am going to book the ring taxi because I want to see it from a professional driver's point of view. And
I think I'm too bad a passenger to do it, even though I will trust the driver. I'm just
you are an appalling passenger, but yes, you are. But it is so much better and
it would
than doing it yourself. My cars are not going on the Nürburgring ever again.
I don't think I'd actually drive it because I'd be so bad. I would not do it justice.
Yeah,
it would be me just going for a country poodle, as I am not a helmsman.
The problem is not you. It's some of the other nutters on there sometimes, and that's what's tricky. So yeah, if you want to know more about that, lots of great information in the Motoring Research article that will, as always, be linked in the show notes. That's about it for this week, I think. Anything I missed?
No.
I
think we've really covered everything very well.
We have. Sorry, we've covered quite a lot this week. That means it's time for me to remind you that between now and next week, you can give us any feedback, share your thoughts for the show at Motoring Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, or on Facebook and on the contact page of motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Remember, you can support us financially via Patreon, and please leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. Andrew, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is if you search for Crack Windscreen on Twitter or Mastodon, and I'm also on LinkedIn as well. And Alan, if people would like to get in touch with you and perhaps for you to recount that story about Sabine Schmidt once again, how should they do that personally?
I'm feeling got at just there.
No.
So personally, you can get in touch with me with any of the social media platforms used by people over the age of 35, where I am at AJP Bradley. That's Bradley. We'll be back very soon, but until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
And safe motoring.